In this video, we are going to start with our book class so that later on we can display all these books on a list under the form. First thing, before we actually start working with our book class, so far we've been fetching all these records. If we go back to our index.php file, we fetched all these records from the lookup tables and we referred to the properties ID and name, and then on the year class, we referred to the year property, but obviously these properties don't exist within these models, so they are only stored dynamically. I think it would be a good idea to actually declare them strictly within the class. So if we open year model to start with, and let's declare this one, so it's going to be public year, and it's going to be of the integer type. If we save and close this file, then if we go to author, actually rather than go to author and all these separate lookup classes, let's open lookup model, which all these lookup classes are extending, and let's put these properties here because all these lookup classes share the same properties, which are ID and name. So public ID, which is of the integer type, and name, which is of the string type. And we can now save and close this file. Same for this index. Let's now open book.php. And the first thing we are going to do here is actually add these properties as well straight away. So we're going to start with public ID, which is of the integer type. Then we have public category ID, which is also of the integer type. After this one, we have public ISBN, which I'm going to put as string, and let's create a few new lines here. There we go. After this ISBN, we are going to have public year of the integer type. After this, public title, which is going to be a string. After title, we're going to have public description, string again. After description, we have public price, string. And after the price, I think that was it. Let's quickly have a look at the migration. So model queries, let's take a MySQL books table. We have ID, category ID, ISBN, year, title, description, and price. That's everything. So we can close this. So we can close all these directories as well. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is to create the SQL method, which will override the default one from within the model class, because our SQL statement for the book model is going to be far more complex than just select all from table. Okay, so we're going to start with public function SQL, which will override the parent class's SQL method, and we return. Then we go for select, and we want to select all of the fields from within the books table. So we're going to start with this table within the curly brackets, surrounded with the backticks, and then full stop and wildcard to indicate that we want to get values from all columns in a table, and then categories table. From this table, we want to get the field name and represent it as field category. So let's quickly add this property straight away here as well. Public category, and it's going to be a string. It's going to be basically the name of the given category associated with the book table. And let's actually do it in stages. Now we're going to go for from statement, use our table, and then left join on the table categories, on categories ID will equal whatever category ID from within the books table represents. So this table, and then full stop category ID. So basically, category ID field associated with the book record will represent the ID of the category within the categories table, and this is when we're going to get this name later on because of this join here. Okay, so this is the beginning of a statement. We will generate a few more dynamic fields. So after the category S category comma, and we're going to start within the brackets, what we're going to do is create a subquery, select, and we use group underscore concat, and we're gonna concatenate name field from table authors, where ID is in, and then we're gonna go in between the brackets again, select capital letter. Doesn't have to be capital letter, but I like to keep things consistent here. So select, and we're gonna go for author ID from author underscore book table, which is our join table, where book ID equals, and then again this table, our books table. Let's put out these backticks around this table as well, single one on each side, and then full stop ID field. So basically ID within the books table, so the ID of the book represents book ID within the author book table, and get me all of the author IDs associated with each book that represents this ID. And then obviously we are concatenating the name field from within the authors, and ID of the author needs to be basically associated with this book. So this is what we're getting. For each given book, we're going to get names of the authors. And group concat by default concatenates all these records, creating a string using comma. We can't use order by clause here because we have two different drivers. We're using MySQL and SQLite, and SQLite does not support order by. So in order to stay consistent between the two drivers, we need to simplify things a little bit. We will order records, these records later on. But for the SQL, we're just going to leave it off. Okay, and whatever this is going to return, which is going to be a string of names of the authors concatenated by comma, how do we want to call it later on? And we want to call it as authors. So this is how we're going to refer. This is going to be a field or property on this object. So public authors. And let's on the dog block, that's going to be a string as well, because this group concat returns a string. Now the next one, I'm going to copy this entire block because there's going to be quite a few of these group concats here. So again, let's select it, copy, comma after these authors, paste it underneath. We also concatenating name, but this time it's going to be from languages. So languages, and we're going to search where ID in. Rather than author ID, this time it's going to be language ID from book languages table. Sorry, book language rather than languages. And then again, book ID needs to equal ID of the book record. And this time it's going to be S rather than authors languages. So that's the next one. Let's add the property. Public languages. Again, it's going to be of the string type. And again, let's copy this entire thing. Comma after languages, paste it under. This time rather than languages, again, we concatenating name. All these lookup tables have the same fields, as you may remember, and we are interested in names here. And now we're going for locations. So from table locations, where ID in, and select location ID from book location this time, lookup table, and again book ID needs to equal ID of the book record, and rather than as languages it's going to be as locations. And let's add this property as well. So public locations, and it's going to be a string as well. And after locations, the last one is going to be for the covers. So if we copy this entire thing, comma after locations, new line, paste it, this time rather than from locations, from covers, and select rather than location ID, it's going to be cover ID, and book cover table, and the same book ID here, but it's going to be as covers. And let's add this as a property as well. So after locations, public covers, and again that's going to be of the string type. Now what these properties will contain, let's have a look at the covers. What this could potentially have would be soft, for instance, hard. I think they are in capital letters there as record. So basically this is what it's going to store. Later on we will be able to explode them using the comma and create the array out of these records, basically. So converting this string into array, and then we're going to be able to check whether the location is within this array and so on. Okay, so that's our SQL statement. Let's update the doc block. It returns string. Let's quickly check what we added actually for the doc block within the model. It's SQL select statement. I'm just going to copy this, make sure it's exactly same. So let's just replace this string, this doc block here. Okay, so our SQL is now done. Let's quickly add one method called books, so we can actually fetch all of the books. So public function books, and return, it's going to be this order by, and we want to order by title in the ascending order, so we don't need to provide the second argument, and then all. So that's going to return all books ordered by title. And let's go add the doc blocks. It's going to return array, and then we have get list of books. Okay, so I think it's a good time for us to start writing tests for our book class. So let's close the app directory, let's close our book class, let's go to the test unit model, and let's create book test. And the book test will extend model case, and here we are going to use model data trait, and we start with our protected property book, and let's just add doc block. It's going to be a book instance, and here we're going to start with the setup method. So protected function setup. First of all, we are going to call parent setup, so parent setup. And after this, we do this book equals new book. And let's remove these brackets here. We need to add use statement for this. So it's going to be book. We want up model book. Okay, so we have now instance of the book associated with our book property. Let's add the doc block here, set up before each test, and it returns a void, return void. There we go. So the next method we are going to create is going to be the method that actually adds book. We're going to be adding books pretty much from every test within this class. So let's create a single method that actually adds this record to the database. So public function add book, and it's going to take array of arguments, user data, and this will be optional because we can obviously use one of the methods that we have available to us from the model data. If we click on this one, you may remember Fakel will generate the book data for us automatically unless we want to override some of these fields. So add book is going to return this book, then create method, which we have available on the model, which obviously book extends, then this book data, and we pass whatever passable data we may receive as an argument. Let's add the doc block here, add, for the summary, let's just scroll up a little bit, add new book record. And it's not going to be a mix for the return, it's going to be actually instance of model. So model app model, there we go. Let's import it as well actually straight away, so it's going to be displayed as a use statement right above the class declaration here. Okay, so this is the helper-like method. Now let's start with the first test, and I'm going to create a few new lines again so we can see things a little bit better. Okay, a public function. First, we're going to test whether we can actually add new book records. So can insert new book. And let's mark it as test. And we're going to assert this, assert true. And the method we're going to call on a book instance is going to be insert, and we're going to insert this book data without actually any custom fields. Everything we let Faker to basically generate these fields. Okay, we don't need semicolon here, we need semicolon after this assert true. Okay, so that's our first test. Let's quickly go to the terminal, and what I'm going to do is run just this test. So PHP unit tests, I need to provide the path, unit, then model book test. There's only one test, so let's just run it, and we have one test, one assertion, and we obviously pass. So this insert statement is definitely working with the book instance. And the next method we're going to run a test for is the method create. As you may remember, insert only adds the record and returns boolean true or false depending on whether the record has been added successfully or not, whereas create will add the record and return the instance of the given model. So public function can create new book, and let's mark it as test. And we're going to start with new book equals this add book, and then we are going to pass some data title so that later on we can actually verify it. Room with a window, for instance. And now we run in this add book because this add book, which we added earlier, runs this create method on the book instance, which is what we need, and it passes basically book data with either data generated by the faker, or if we pass any argument. In our case, we've passed through an argument of the array type, which is required here, obviously with the title overwriting the fake one. So this new model should have this title, record should be added to the table, and we should have instance of the book class here. So let's quickly verify this. This assert instance of, and that should be instance of the book class, and we pass a new book. And if it wasn't, if it failed, then what we're going to put here is book : create did not return book instance. So basically when we run the method create on a book instance, it did not return itself. It did not return a new instance of the book. So let's quickly test it again, and we're going to run the same test, just the book test, hit return, and we get an error, category syntax error. So there's some SQL problem. If we open our model book, if we scroll up, and there we go, we missed the comma after the first select statement. So we've got select table, everything basically with this wildcard, but we've forgotten about comma. Let's save it, close it, and try again. And there we go, we've got two tests, two assertions, all passing. So now another thing I want to do another assertion here, because we obviously might have only returned the instance of the book, but not really added the record to the database. So I want to verify this as well. So what I'm going to do is create a new variable book and run simply this book find, and we want to find record by the ID associated with this instance. So new book ID. So now this book should fetch the record from a database and create another instance of the book class. So again, this assert equals, and we are going to have room with a window, and then book title property, and if it does not equal, then we're going to say book was not created, because create method is the one we've used here. Okay, let's try and test it. Run the same test. We have two tests, three assertions. This second assertion obviously is within the same method. Okay, so everything's passing. I think that's enough for this video. Let's move to the next one.